From the Cronkite studios in downtown Phoenix, this is Cronkite News.
A controversial decision. The Environmental Protection Agency changes the rule about ponds holding coal mining waste.
Making the rounds, Judge Brett Kavanaugh meets with Senator Jeff Flake on Capitol Hill.
The woman behind the popular Pixar movie, how the author of Coco is spreading inspiration to children everywhere.
Cronkite News starts now.
Good evening and welcome to Cronkite News on Arizona PBS. I'm Amanda Mason.
And I'm Karine Haro. Thanks for joining us. The EPA makes a decision to roll back regulations when it comes to the coal industry, but some environmental advocates think the new rules are a gift to big business. Allison Snell explains the new standards that oversee coal ash.
The federal rules being removed were put in place back in 2015. I spoke with environmental advocates today who say that letting the state regulate the Clean Water Act could create a muddy situation.
You don't want a toxic soup in your waterways.
Sandy Barr is with the Sierra Club. She's the director of the Grand Canyon chapter. She works to help protect Arizona's air, land, and water. Barr explains that coal ash is a dangerous substance that has already caused disaster, and that changing the law from federal to the state level could cause even more harm.
Arizona and the United States overall less protected, and so it's important to try and keep the coal ash out of our waterways. Coal ash is filled with all kinds of contaminants, and so if it's going into the water, it affects us.
Randy Saraglio is a conservative advocate with the Center of Biological Diversity. He works to protect the environment from potential hazards.
Weakening administration of this program, of this important program, would raise the likelihood that these kinds of coal ash facilities create environmental catastrophes. The state simply does not have the expertise or the funding to properly implement this.
Both experts say this is not a political issue, but one of public health.
This is something that needs to be very carefully managed with public health, first and foremost, in mind.
The number one goal is to protect public health and the environment.
Arizona has over 6 coal plants and 50 coal ash ponds. In downtown Phoenix, Allison Snell, Cronkite News.
New tonight, the White House says talks are underway for Vladimir Putin to visit Washington in the fall. Meanwhile, President Trump now disagrees with the proposal raised by Putin to interrogate Americans in exchange for help into FBI's Russia probe. The White House released a statement today that said, quote, "It is a proposal that was made in sincerity by President Putin, but President Trump disagrees with it." In the meantime, the administration is standing firm on the notion that Russia did, in fact, try to interfere with elections.
I don't think there's any question in the intel community or at DHS that Russians attempted to infiltrate and interfere with our electoral system. I don't think there's any doubt that they did it, and I think we should all be prepared, given that capability and will, that they'll do it again.
Is Russia still targeting the United States?
I think we would be foolish to think they're not. They have capability, they have the will. We got to be prepared.
Russian President Vladimir Putin says his first summit with President Trump was successful, and he is accusing Trump's opponents in the United States of hampering any progress on the issues they discussed.
While Trump administration officials were busy reaffirming their belief that Russia meddled in the 2016 elections, the Senate was refusing to vote on a symbolic resolution. The resolution agreed with U.S. intelligence agencies finding that Russia did interfere and rejected Russian President Vladimir Putin's claims that it didn't. The bipartisan resolution was introduced by Arizona Senator Jeff Flake and Delaware Democrat Chris Coons, who said it was intended as a statement of support for U.S. intelligence services. It said Russia must be held accountable, calling for sanctions and for congressional hearings into what happened at the summit Monday between Trump and Putin.
It's symbolic, but now's the time for a symbolic move right today. We can follow up with additional sanctions or other actions if we need to. But right now, we need to stand up and say we stand with our intelligence agencies. We don't believe the words of a dictator, Putin.
A vote on the Flake Coons resolution was blocked by Texas Senator John Cornyn, who said Russia's actions called for more than a symbolic resolution. But Flake and Coons said they will try again next week to get a vote on the resolution.
The Justice Department's probe of Russian interference with the 2016 elections appeared to still be on Senator Flake's mind during his event today, which was a closed-door meeting with Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. The status of the independent counsel was just one of the questions Flake had for Kavanaugh during the half-hour meeting, as Danny Coble tells us from our Washington bureau.
Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh has been making the rounds on Capitol Hill since he was nominated by President Donald Trump last Monday. Today's meeting with Senator Jeff Flake was apparently last minute, but former Arizona Senator Jon Kyl said that it went well.
First of all, with Senator Flake, it was great. We're approaching about 20 now that we've had. We're trying to schedule as many as we can. And he had conflicts, but was kind enough to fit us in, and I appreciated that very much. And me and Judge Kavanaugh had a great conversation.
Kyl has been guiding Kavanaugh through the confirmation process, helping to set up meetings with senators, which Flake was one of the 5 meetings today. Flake said he was pleased with Kavanaugh's answers, including one on the Chevron case. That Supreme Court ruling empowers regulatory agencies, which Flake said makes a difference in states like Arizona, where about 85% of the land is publicly owned.
He answered that well. Also on the independent counsel statute and things like that. He's very much ready for the hearings, I think.
Those hearings have not been set so far. Kavanaugh has only met with Republican senators, but Kyl said those with Democrats will come soon enough.
Well, they've not been willing to meet yet. I think they're waiting for their leader to meet first. There's sort of a protocol that you don't set up your meeting until after your leader has met or the chairman of the committee.
Flake said after today's meeting that he is impressed by Kavanaugh's record and can see why he was tapped for the Supreme Court.
Certainly. I mean, you just look at these 12 years of decisions on the Fifth Circuit, or I'm sorry, the D.C. Circuit. And a lot of service before that. I mean, in government, he's got an impressive record, he really does.
Kavanaugh will be filling the seat vacated by Justice Anthony Kennedy, who announced his retirement last month. The court is in recess until October, but for now, the Senate Judiciary Committee has not yet scheduled the hearings for Kavanaugh. In Washington, Danny Coble, Cronkite News.
Former First Lady Michelle Obama has announced a new voter registration initiative. It is titled When We All Vote. The initiative will feature Obama and others sending personal messages urging people to register to vote. Mrs. Obama is teaming up with celebrities such as actor Tom Hanks for the campaign. According to one document describing the initiative plans, When We All Vote will partner with media outlets that young Americans use most. The nonpartisan nature of the campaign is reportedly frustrating a few top Democrats who would prefer Obama focus on campaigning for Democratic candidates.
The March for Our Lives movement is hitting the roads and looking to get young people educated, registered, and motivated to vote. Jordan Daphnis met with Arizona members ready to travel the state.
The March for Our Lives movement announced at a fundraising event this morning that they plan to keep the wheels turning when it comes to their mission. From a bus tour to a convention, the group says they're working to influence the midterm elections in November.
Last March, Tony St. John organized the first walkout for her high school in Chandler.
It's just this unorganized, not planned thing that just came out of this place of anger and sadness and my want for change.
A few months later, the group has organized numerous walkouts, marches, and die-ins across the state. They plan to continue the momentum with a bus tour across Arizona.
They hope to go around and again do voter outreach and education and start more chapters in high schools all across the state coming up.
March for Our Lives has one mission: stopping gun violence. The group wants changes in legislation, and they want to speak with Governor Doug Ducey.
We put 30,000 people on the doorstep of the Capitol, and the governor won't even take a meeting with gun violence advocates and these kids. But, you know, four NRA lobbyists fly in, and he has closed-door meetings with them and writes a bill.
Cronkite News reached out to the governor's office for comment. We received this statement.
The governor has made school safety a priority. He proactively met with students, parents, teachers, law enforcement officials, and mental health experts to craft a school safety plan. And it's disappointing this common sense plan did not pass last session, but he will continue to work to get it done. March for Our Lives is working to register as many voters as possible for November with the intent of electing officials who will enact gun control measures.
If our legislators won't seriously look at those kind of common sense reforms, then we're gonna elect people that will.
The local chapter is planning a bus tour across the state over the next couple months. The National March for Our Lives organization is on a bus tour right now in California. The group has an event scheduled tomorrow in Los Angeles and Saturday in Orange County. In the broadcast center, Jordan Daphnis, Cronkite News.
One of the most important jobs for our elected officials is to decide how to spend money.
No one wants to see it wasted. Coming up on Cronkite News, a Washington watchdog group puts out a book highlighting the waste.
Plus, find your passion and always do your best. The inspiring woman who wrote a children's book from the Disney Pixar film, Coco.
I'm Judy Woodruff, anchor and managing editor of the PBS NewsHour. The journalists of tomorrow face a fast-changing media landscape, but quality news remains vitally important to our communities, our country, and our world. At ASU's Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication, students learn solid, reliable reporting, holding the powerful accountable, and rebuilding the public's trust. The Cronkite School and Arizona PBS, preparing the next generation for a stronger future of journalism.
As journalists at Cronkite News, we report on stories that matter to you by focusing on the local impact. We dig deeper and work tirelessly to keep you informed.
Live in Wickerburg.
Live in Los Angeles.
In Cleveland.
In Washington.
In Louisville.
From Jerusalem.
Live in Philadelphia. From around the world to right here in Phoenix.
At Cronkite News, we report the facts and stick to the truth.
I'm Ted Simons, host and managing editor of Arizona Horizon. The 2018 election season has arrived. Join us for primary and general election debates. Right here, meet the candidates and hear their positions. Arizona Horizon, your source for what matters most this election season. Only on Arizona PBS.
Bringing home the bacon. Politicians often brag about it when elections roll around, but government groups say it can become a problem when too much money is spent without much oversight.
A new report on so-called pork barrel spending says it's on the rise again. Pat Pabletti has our story from our Washington bureau.
It is time to drain the swamp in Washington, D.C.
Donald Trump promised to rein in wasteful government spending, but it appears that Congress didn't get the message. Citizens Against Government Waste, a Washington-based think tank, recently unveiled its annual Congressional Pig Book, which claims to show $14.7 billion in pork barrel spending, a 117% increase in earmarks from last year. Republican lawmakers who gathered for the unveiling of the Pig Book yesterday denounced the so-called pork barrel spending, which circumvents a merit-based allocation system in favor of discretionary spending.
I think many of us believe that pork should be on our tables, not as part of the federal budget.
The Pig Book revealed 232 earmarks, a 43% rise from the previous year, which CAGW claims has cost taxpayers over $14 billion on everything from F-35 fighter jets to a brown tree snake eradication program.
To me, at least, that seems fiscal lunacy. One of the most significant conservative victories for reining in out-of-control spending. And yet, Republican majorities would be the one to abandon them.
Senator Jeff Flake, who has long been an advocate for cutting earmarks, called his own party's lack of fiscal responsibility not good and expressed disappointment in rising earmark spending.
If you look at the last appropriation bill, or the big omnibus bill that we did in January, it busted all of our budgets and went far beyond what we should have spent. So as a Republican, one who believes in fiscal discipline, limited government, we haven't done very well.
In Washington, Pat Pobletti, Cronkite News.
Today, the Arizona Office of Economic Opportunity released a new jobs report. For June, Arizona's unemployment rate is at 4.7%. The state's economy lost about 45,000 jobs from June, and the top sector that gained jobs was construction. For hundreds of years, Arizona has had a thriving farming community.
And it's much more than just cotton or wheat. Next on Cronkite News, why certain beans grown in our state help make connections to the past.
Temperatures are rising throughout this weekend and next week, so stay tuned for your full 7-day weather forecast.
Cronkite News, weeknights at 5 on Arizona PBS.
I'm Matt Berry, ESPN Sports Center anchor and graduate of ASU's Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication. With its bachelor's and master's degrees in sports journalism, the Cronkite School is preparing the next generation of sports journalists to tell stories that matter, stories that excite, inspire, and inform. Cronkite immerses students in covering sports at all levels in one of the country's top sports markets. It's this hands-on experience under the guidance of award-winning sports media veterans that shape the top journalists of tomorrow.
If you're looking for one show that tells you what happened that day in the world of business, it's NBR.
We saw a classic shipwreck.
Nordstrom's opening stores.
Triple-digit gains.
Crude climbs.
We're there to help our audience find new investment ideas.
The market still has room to go up.
Nightly Business Report is the longest-running business television program in history.
Weeknights at 10:30 on Arizona PBS.
A Native American farm is doing more than producing crop. It's connecting the present with the past.
And it starts with indigenous foods. Reporter Emily Richardson explains how food is such an important part of Native American culture.
According to Ramona Farms, in the 70s, the tepary bean had nearly gone extinct, and tribal elders were urging farms to start growing the beans again. Ramona found a few seeds for both the white and brown tepary beans in her childhood home and says it became clear to her that her mission was to bring back the beans and the culture to her community.
Culture is to feed our spirits and to feed our souls and to feed our community. The food should be an absolute necessary part of that, and it is.
Ramona's daughter, Velvet Button, moved away from the farm in her 20s, but ended up returning because she loves her life on the farm and sharing the history behind the food they're growing.
I am very honored to be able to share that with people because I don't really get to see the hard work and the true love of the land that my parents have and that they've been able to maintain all of these years through all the struggles.
While Ramona Farms grows alfalfa and cotton, their passion project is the tepary bean.
Now, long ago, it was a staple food here at Hill River, but along with our diminishing farming practices, we lost touch with our tepary bean. My mom and dad worked really, really hard at packaging them so that we could make it available again to not only our community, but the world community.
According to the 2012 USDA Census of Agriculture, 56% of farmers in Arizona are Native American.
Something that Native American people do, not only in Hill River, but also in other tribes. That's how we survived. You know, we did the hunting of the animals. We grew our corn and our wheat, and that's how we actually survived.
Button believes Native communities have started to reconnect with their culture, partly because of the food sovereignty movement.
It has helped to connect us once again as Indigenous communities and helping to rebuild those foodways that we used to have. In any culture, the best way to not only share that culture, but to really know it and be a part of it is to eat it.
The USDA will be releasing a new agriculture census with an updated percentage of Native American farmers in 2019. In the Broadcast Center, Emily Richardson, Cronkite News.
Arizona could be getting some much-needed relief this winter. A new report says that a strong El Nino pattern can be expected. The U.S. Climate Prediction Center says there is close to a 70% chance that an El Nino condition will appear. With the right atmospheric conditions and an El Nino pattern, we could expect a wetter winter. There's a chance of more rainfall in the high country. Some neighborhoods in Flagstaff have dealt with flooding, and debris. Streets in one neighborhood reopened today after crews cleaned up trees, limbs, and boulders that washed into the roadways. Storm chances are slim for the valley in the next few days.
But we do have an excessive heat watch coming soon. Hannah DeRuiter has our weather forecast.
We are currently just below our high in Phoenix at 104 with partly cloudy skies. Taking a look at our temperatures across the valley, we're seeing 106 in Glendale and in Goodyear, and Mesa is our lowest at 102. Now, we were issued an air quality alert, so if you have any respiratory issues or any small children, you do want to avoid any unnecessary outdoor activities because it may cause breathing difficulties. Taking a look at our state highs for the day, we are seeing down in Casa Grande 103, down in Tucson they were just a little bit cooler at 97 degrees, and moving on up north, 87 in the Grand Canyon, and Flagstaff did see some rain today, and their high was 74 degrees. But for us here in Phoenix, we're not as lucky. Our temperatures are going to continue to rise. We're seeing 107 on Saturday, and on Sunday 108. Moving on into next week, Tuesday we're hitting 114, and on Wednesday we're hitting 115. So be sure to enjoy that cloud coverage and slightly cooler temperatures this weekend, because next week we are going to see some higher temperatures. For Cronkite Weather, I'm Hannah DeRuiter.
It was a movie that won an Oscar and grossed over $800 million.
As well as inspiring countless children across the world. Coming up on Cronkite News, meet the woman behind Coco and learn about her important message that comes from the heart.
I like working for Cronkite News because it gives us the opportunity to find a different angle on the same stories that every other news outlet is covering across Arizona. As students, we have the opportunity to cover issues all across the state of Arizona.
It gives me a good chance to sharpen my skills, improve my skills, learn the techniques in a newsroom and in the programs and teamwork and technology, getting me prepared for the real world. And at the same time, I think we do a great job, make some great stories, do great journalism for the city of Phoenix and the state of Arizona.
I'm Ted Simons, host and managing editor of Arizona Horizon. Join us each weekday at 5:30 and 10 as we bring you the top newsmakers who impact the state. We cover the stories in depth that shape and affect our local communities, and we take the time to ensure that all voices are equally heard. For more than 30 years, Arizona Horizon has been your voice and your source for what matters most, right here on Arizona PBS.
Millions of people die every year from drinking dirty water. I would never have felt I had the ability to do something without ASU pushing me. We built filtration systems out of local materials with the people. To see those kids drink clean water for the first time, it's the most rewarding feeling that you can ever have. I went to ASU because I wanted to change the world. The thing I never would have expected is how the world would have changed me.
Ground will be broken on an affordable housing plan this weekend near the Grand Canyon. The small town of Tucson has struggled to build housing, primarily because it's landlocked by National Park and National Forest. The new development is made possible after 20 acres was donated to the town. The housing is expected to be finished next summer.
The League of United Latin American Citizens Convention is happening in downtown Phoenix. It's a convention to celebrate Latin heritage in Arizona and to continue fighting for Latino rights. Speakers include Arizona lawmakers, an astronaut, and even former Vice President Joe Biden. But last night, I spoke with a woman who has inspired children across the world.
Coco is the story of a 12-year-old Mexican boy who dreams of becoming an accomplished musician and learns about his family's musical history while on an adventure through the land of the dead on the holiday Dia de los Muertos. Ronnie Capen Rivera Ashford, the author of a read-along storybook for the movie Coco, grew up in Nogales, Arizona. She's been writing since the age of 15 with a goal to connect families and promote acceptance.
The message from Coco today is that music comes from our heart, writing comes from our heart, being with people we love, whether it's family or friends, and acknowledging and honoring our culture.
For 11-year-old Jocelyn Perez, the story of Coco brings back memories of her grandma, who was nicknamed Coco.
Well, my favorite memory is that when she was sick, like I would play Barbies with her when I was small.
She also remembers the words of wisdom her grandmother shared.
To never let anybody control you.
Rivera hopes to inspire children like Perez to find their dreams. Rivera says she herself has faced many challenges, including being rejected 64 times before she could publish her book.
Never give up, find your passion, and always do your best. And on any given day, your best will be different, but if you do your best, you cannot fail. I tell children or students, if you do your best on a day you're sick and the best you can do is stay home, take care of yourself, rest, that's the best you can do that day. But on a day when you're feeling great, go out and give it your all.
As a bilingual author, Rivera keeps tradition alive and preserves languages by adding historical and scientific facts in a glossary at the end of each book.
Cronkite News is proud to be the news division of Arizona PBS. Here's what's coming up on Arizona Horizon and PBS NewsHour.
On the next Arizona Horizon, hear from the two candidates running in the Republican primary for Secretary of State. It's a clean elections debate right here on Arizona Horizon.
I'm John Yang in Chicago, where they're celebrating the 50th anniversary of Special Olympics and looking forward to the next 50 years. I'll have that story on tomorrow's PBS NewsHour.
That's it for Cronkite News tonight. Thanks for joining us.
And for top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.